Genetics are a constant topic in the fitness slash lifting community. Lots of creators warn against developing false expectations based on others who may have better genetics. If we're talking about top bodybuilders, the creme de la creme of other sports, whatever the sport, whatever the field that is in question, one of the key components that is discussed, especially nowadays, is genetics and the question of how much do genetics matter? I'm here to tell you they don't. Which sounds kind of wild right out the gate. You might be thinking, what? Obviously there are people who have better and worse genetics. What the fuck is this dude talking about? I think the problem is the way this entire perspective is framed. When you're talking about you're probably not going to look like Chris Bumstead if you get into bodybuilding, I wouldn't argue that that is a statement that is wrong. However, you might want to ask yourself, what about that statement makes it true, and what are the implications of that statement? Should you not strive to be as good as Chris Bumstead? Should you not strive to be good in general, like a high-tier bodybuilder? Or should you not strive to look specifically like Chris Bumstead? I want to give you an example, something I thought about in regards to genetics, of three people. We are looking at these three people from an outside theoretical perspective. So we know their genetics. In this hypothetical example, we know what level of genetics they were born with. However, these people, of course, do not know their genetics. And I'll get into that later in the video. Person number one was born with perfect genetics for, let's say, bodybuilding. Okay? This person has the perfect genetics for bodybuilding. They are very strong. They are very aesthetic, very good looking, very naturally symmetrical. They have very nice looking muscles. They build muscle very easily. They don't have much trouble staying lean. They generally have a very balanced sense of hunger and satiation, etc. And this person has always been this way, right? Because this person has great genetics, even as a kid, this person is already strong, perhaps decently tall, but not too tall, right? Not super lanky, probably good at a lot of sports, in general, very physically gifted. And because of this fact, this kid never puts in any hard work. Because this kid is so gifted physically, it never works hard for anything in the physical domain. Now we get into the early teenage years, and this kid is still dominating, or at least competing at a high level in the sort of general sports that you might be involved in as a regular teenager. And when it comes to, just playing ball with your friends, basketball, football, whatever, this kid is obviously very good. Compared to your average friend who just plays football sometimes, or basketball, or whatever, again, he is very talented, very gifted. However, as he perhaps gets into a sport more seriously, joins a sports club or whatever, or gets into lifting more seriously, he is starting to be outperformed, or even just starting to be matched in his ability by other people. Simply because of the fact that these people are trying to compete with him so they are working harder. Now this kid, this young man at this point, has never had to work hard a single day in his life to be a physical specimen. And because of this fact, he cannot cope with the sudden pressure of other people who maybe are not as genetically gifted as he is, but are working much harder because they want to be like him or be like people who are like him, who are as gifted as him. Because he can't cope with this pressure, he gives up. He maybe lifts a little bit. Maybe he, starts modeling as like a fitness model. Maybe he plays some sports casually with his friends. Maybe he gets into a sport that requires some level of physical ability, but also is very, intelligence-based or based on other skills, other domains, if you will. Because this guy is not used to hard physical work, to actually pushing himself on a physical level, his genetics have actually been to his detriment in this example. Now let's compare him to person number 2. Person number 2 doesn't have great genetics, maybe doesn't have terrible genetics, it doesn't really matter. The important thing is he doesn't have good genetics. Okay, he's somewhere in the middle. He has average genetics, maybe slightly below average. Definitely not peak human potential. And because of this fact, he kind of stays away from the field of sports, from the field of lifting, working out, for much of his childhood, teenage years, much of his youth. However, he has always been interested in, he has always been drawn to physical ability. He has always been drawn to a certain sport, what have you. He has always been drawn to some form of athletic prowess. And as an adult, he decides to say screw it. As a kid, as a teenager, you are much more easily influenced by your surroundings, and he just wasn't brave enough. He felt like he wasn't qualified to compete in these sports. But as an adult, he makes the decision, I want to become, in our example, a bodybuilder, or I want to pick up bodybuilding more seriously, even if he doesn't want to become a professional bodybuilder, maybe. He starts working hard. He starts going to the gym, working out hard, and he starts working out at, his early, mid-20s, something like that. Again, he hasn't worked out really in any capacity besides the average amount of sports that kids do as kids, maybe even a little less than that, because again, he's not physically gifted in any capacity. So he really only starts training in his 20s, 24, 25. Within a couple of years, and maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 6 years, okay? Doesn't have to be the first few years of lifting. But within a couple of years of this guy, as an adult, starting to lift, taking it seriously, working hard, even though he has started late, working hard from the beginning, educating himself, going to the gym consistently, sticking to his programs. Maybe he has a coach, or maybe he is, watching a lot of content. He has a very well put together program. Within these 5 or 6 years tops, he has surpassed the guy with the creme de la creme genetics in terms of his physique. Now, there might still be a few caveats. Maybe he's still just shorter than the other guy. Sure, that's possible. Maybe he doesn't have the perfect bone structure, whatever. But all those things taken into account, his physique is superior. As a bodybuilder, again, because that's what we picked for this example, he is a superior specimen to example number 1, even though the guy in the first example had peak genetics. Let that sink in for a moment. Just the fact that this guy decided to do what he wanted to do made him superior to someone who had peak genetics but didn't do what he could have done with them. Now you might say, well, this is an example of two people who are not optimal in some capacity. One of them has perfect genetics, but didn't, he didn't go all the way. He didn't pursue his potential. The other guy does not have great genetics, but he worked hard. So yeah, he might be better than the first guy after some time, but he's still not the human peak, the ultimate bodybuilder, whatever that may be. I want to give you the third example now. And the third example is a guy who has always worked hard. This guy has trained in some capacity all his life. He's worked hard since childhood. In elementary school, he was training in some capacity. He picks up weightlifting as an adolescent, as an early teenager. He goes into it full on, does research. He has a coach, all that good stuff. Okay, a good coach. Okay, not one of those Hollywood trainers. And he very quickly becomes an absolute god as as a young adult. In his early 20s, he already looks incredible. I'm not going to tell you the genetics of this third guy. You want to know why? Because realistically, looking at him from the outside, you wouldn't be able to know. And that's the thing. You have no fucking clue what this guy's genetics are. This guy has been working hard all his life. What is the result of that? He looks better than you. He looks better than the other two guys, the other two examples I gave. Out of these three examples, he is the best looking. That's all I'm going to tell you. Does he have great genetics? Does he maybe have above average genetics? Or does he perhaps even just have average or below average genetics? But he has worked hard and smart for so long that it's irrelevant. The question of whether or not someone has good genetics is impossible to answer to an extent. Because the only way you would know that is if every single human being in the world trained the exact same way for an extended period of time, that is also the exact same period of time, by the way, and then we look at the results. Does a Ronnie Coleman have good genetics for bodybuilding? Probably. There's a very good chance. But do we have any clue how good his genetics actually are? No. Is it safe to say that he is one of the best to ever have done it in terms of genetics? Not in terms of his actual results, in terms of his genetics. That he is one of the genetically most gifted to ever have done it. Is that safe to say? No, it actually isn't. There are some obvious pros and cons that you can have in terms of things like height. But if we look at your actual muscle growth or stamina. There's obviously lots of different things involved, but I think bodybuilding is a very easy example because we can limit ourselves to muscle growth. This is like a key factor, a very fundamental, important factor of this specific endeavor. We have no fucking clue what Ronnie Coleman's genetics are. That is the truth. Because no one ever worked out like Ronnie Coleman except Ronnie Coleman. Does that mean that there's no one who has done similar exercise to him? Absolutely not. Most of the exercises he did in his time were typical bodybuilding exercises. But is there any single person who has lived the same exact life as Ronnie Coleman, who started lifting at the same point in time, who lifted just as hard with exactly the same splits, exactly the same exercise selection, exactly the same amount of reps on different sets? No. So how the fuck am I going to sit here and say this guy or this guy has perfect genetics? There are some markers. There are some things you can point out, sure. But the truth is, you just really don't know. And in many ways, this is the key point I want to make in this video. You can never really know your true limitations, the true limitations of your genetics. You can never really know. And by believing your genetics are bad, you are actually limiting yourself. This is a typical black pill approach to lifting. I have bad blah 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 genetics. I have bad muscle building genetics. I have bad calf genetics. Whatever. How is this relevant? I really want to encourage you to go ahead into the comment section right now and tell me how this is relevant. Does it matter whether my training wasn't optimized for a certain muscle group, leading to me having an imbalance, or whether that muscle group is just genetically predisposed in me to not respond as much to training, leading to me having an imbalance? Again, we're still talking about bodybuilding, but this goes for anything else. Like if I want to consistently improve my strength in all of my physical capacities, if I just want to, as I do with my training, want to improve my general athletic capability, I want to make sure all my muscles are strong, at least to a certain extent. And if a certain muscle is not fulfilling my goals, is not as well developed as it should be based on the kind of physique I am trying to build, how is it relevant whether this is based on genetics or on a fault in my training? The result is the same. With the training I am currently doing, this muscle is lagging behind what I want to achieve. It's lagging behind the balance I would like in my physique, visually, strength-wise, whatever it may be. What is the conclusion that I reach based on this? I have to train this. I have to train this muscle more. I have to train this muscle differently. I have to change something. Maybe this muscle needs more volume. Maybe this muscle needs less volume, but more intensity. Maybe I should do less sets for it, but go harder. Maybe the exercises I am doing for this muscle just aren't hitting it right. Or maybe they are hitting it right, but, it's just not enough. I need more. Maybe this muscle has been neglected in the past, and my current workout is actually fine for its development, but because before that I had a workout program that was shit for this muscle and caused it to lag behind, it's now not able to catch up. So I actually need a phase where I need to focus on this muscle, train it more than it needs to be trained to maintain a balance so that it can catch up. And then I can go back to a program where my muscles grow relatively equally. Whatever may be the case, I need to change something in my regiment to account for this lack of progress or this lack of balance regarding this muscle group. And whether or not that has to do with the way I lived my life or the way I trained in the past or with my genetic potential is fucking irrelevant. The result is the same. So why do you want to limit yourself to what you think your genetics might be? If you want to achieve something, anything, if you have a dream, a big goal, something you want to reach, you need to believe in it. That doesn't mean, and I want to be very clear about this doesn't mean it'll 100% come true. And that can sound like a hard pill to swallow, but that's the truth. Okay, if you want to achieve something, you do need to believe in it, but that doesn't guarantee it'll 100% come true. But if you don't believe it, it'll definitely not come true. I can guarantee that. Like, the chances of your dreams just coming true by coincidence are slim fucking pickings. Okay? If you want shit to come true, you gotta believe in it. You gotta believe in it 100%, wholeheartedly, and work hard. And there's a good chance you'll get somewhere. And maybe you won't even get where you initially expected to get, but this is where we're going to get into expectations, but you will have gotten somewhere. See, the key problem, or a key problem, with this whole genetics topic is that we're talking about expectations at all. Creators who warn against developing false expectations, they might be trying to do a good thing, but they have missed the mark already. Why do you have expectations of what you're going to achieve? Your training doesn't owe you anything. The world doesn't owe you anything. Like, who are you to go to the gym, follow a certain regimen, and then be disappointed when it doesn't give you the results you wanted? Who are you to expect a certain level of results? That's not how the world works. Like, what are we talking about here? If you want to achieve something, build a business. Okay, I'm going like far out here. This is a completely different example, building a business, right? But if you want to achieve something in general, you have to work hard. But just because you work hard, you can't expect it to work, or you can't expect it to work right away. What you have to do is to continuously work hard, to continuously educate yourself, to continuously keep improving in your pursuit of this thing, a successful business, a great physique, or athletic performance. And this will infinitely increase your chances of it actually coming true. But they are still chances. The world does have random factor that you cannot account for. There are things that are outside of your control. And the sooner you accept that, the better. I made a video about this It's somewhere up here. If you go into the gym with expectations, you're probably going to be disappointed. Maybe you will be pleasantly surprised if your expectations were actually lower than, what you managed to achieve. But there's a good chance you will be disappointed. So why are you going into the gym with expectations at all? I have a suggestion for you. Here's an expectation that'll definitely come true. Go into the gym for a month, or train at home, as I do, right? Do that for a month with the expectation of being in better shape after that month than you were before. That expectation will come true. I can promise you that. If you're actually doing something at the gym, if you're not just going there, you will be in better shape. You will probably look better. You will definitely be fitter, stronger, maybe more enduring if you do like treadmill runs or whatever. You will improve. The only expectation you should have is that you will be better than yourself before X amount of training. To what degree, how much you should achieve in a certain period of time, there should be no expectation of that. You can, if you have been lifting for a long time, as I have, not a super long time. Let me be clear on this. I think I have been lifting for a long time by what people nowadays consider to be a long time before they hop on drugs because they have reached their natural potential. I'll talk about that as well in a future video. It's fucking clown shit. But like I've been lifting for close to 10 years, something like that. So a lot of kids nowadays would consider that a long time. If you've been lifting for a significant amount of time, you might have a rough estimate of what you're going to achieve in the next year, the next 2 or 3 years, something like that, right? Me right now, I'm shooting for a certain weight, and I have a general idea of how long it's probably going to take to get there while staying within a certain frame of body fat percentages. But I don't demand this of the world, of my training. I don't expect to get this and get disappointed when it doesn't happen as quickly as I think it should. That's entitlement. You are not entitled, let me tell you right now, to jack fucking shit. You go to the gym as an entitled brat, thinking, this is what my arms need to look like, this is what my chest needs to look like after training for 6 months, after training for a year, you will probably be disappointed. And even if they actually look the way you wanted them to look, because your physique changes relatively slowly, sure, it changes comparatively quickly as a beginner, but in general, physique changes take time. Because of this fact, you probably won't even realize how good your physique looks or how good it would have looked to the eyes of untrained you or of you before these 6 months, before this year. That's, of course, the whole topic of body dysmorphia. Bit of a different topic to an extent from what we're talking about right now. But yeah, to summarize, expectations are not going to get you anywhere. The truth is, about most things in life, you need to take what you want, not expect it. There's no entitlement allowed in this business of working hard. It's just not going to get you anywhere. You want to sit around and expect shit to come to you. You want to be disappointed because you put in a little bit of work and you didn't get what you expected? Go ahead. See where that gets you. While you do that, while you go sulk in your corner, I'm going to be here hitting a workout after this video. And let's talk again in 5 years and see where you are, where your attitude got you, and see where I am. And I guarantee you, even if you were in comparable shape to me right now, which is probably not the case if you have this kind of attitude towards working out, but even if that were the case, I will be in significantly better shape, probably, in 5 years than you will be. Because there's nothing to expect. If you expect things to happen for you, maybe they will, probably they won't. If you take what you want, you will definitely get something. And maybe it won't be quite what you were hoping for. But if you don't hope for anything except getting something, you will definitely get something. If you start taking, if you start doing shit. Your choice. I gotta get this video finished because I do actually have to work out afterwards, and I've got a friend coming over later, so I want to finish my workout ideally before that happens so he doesn't have to wait around. One thing I wanted to talk about quickly before I finish this video is an example I thought of. I didn't completely come up with it. I wouldn't say that. But I kind of thought on this topic of the I want to be Brad Pitt example. This is something someone mentioned, or actually I've heard multiple people mention in regards to fitness, in regards to physique, in interviews in these sort of Hollywood context. And I think it is kind of a good example in the sense that while I think this statement is probably in many cases not meant the way it sounds, it is a good sort of thought exercise to talk about what you should wish for and what you shouldn't wish for. If you say, I want to be Brad Pitt, what exactly do you mean by that? Do you mean you want to be good looking? Do you mean you want to be cool? You want to be suave? You want to be in great shape? You want to stay in great shape up until like an advanced age? I don't know how old Brad Pitt is actually at the moment, but he might be over 60, maybe. And he's still in very good shape and still pretty good looking, right? For a guy his age. I think actually for a guy in general, he's still pretty good looking. Is it any of these that I have just mentioned? Is that what makes you say, I want to be Brad Pitt? Assuming this is something you would say, because this is the kind of statement you hear from some people regarding, actors, models, whatever. Or do you literally want to be Brad Pitt? Because any of the things I just mentioned, you can work towards those. You can get in great shape. Even if you don't have perfect genetics, you can get to a point physically where you are pretty fit and pretty good looking. And even if you have the worst genetics in the world, you can get to a point where you are significantly better looking and in significantly better shape. You feel significantly better. You are significantly more competent than you would have been if you didn't work out. So even if you still aren't that strong, that athletic, that good looking, aesthetic, you're still better than you would have been if you didn't work out. So, I mean, what's the point of really talking about that? It's an improvement either way. Your genetics don't really matter at that point. You can also become cooler, more suave, all of these things are also things you can acquire. This is obviously outside the topic of working out, but it is, a form of training, a form of acquiring a skill that is comparable in the sense that you can put effort into it, you can research it, and you can get better at it. All of the things I mentioned are possible. The only thing that is not possible is you actually becoming Brad Pitt. Because Brad Pitt is a different human being from you. No two human beings are the same. You cannot possibly become Brad Pitt. And this sounds kind of like an obvious statement, but I do think it is important to hammer this point home. You cannot become anyone else. Even your father, who in many cases, obviously depending on the relationship you have with your father, the way you were raised, but in many cases, first of all, is a very close genetic match to you. But even if you got most of your genetics in terms of like physical appearance, let's say, from your father's side, in terms of muscle building, etc. And even if your father, which I think in most cases is at least to an extent true, raised you to be a version of yourself, ideally, of course, a better version of himself, but to some extent, at least to be similar to him, you can't even become that guy. And he is probably the most similar to you it'll get in terms of genetic potential. Maybe your brother, maybe you have like a brother, a twin brother, who has the exact genetic mix that you got, okay? But you can't even become him. He's still a different dude. You can look at anyone and say, I'm impressed by this guy's strength. I'm impressed by this guy's knowledge, by this guy's intellectual capabilities, by this guy's athleticism, agility, by the way this guy looks. Work on those things. You can't become this guy, but you can become a better version of yourself. And I don't think any healthy human being actually has as their life's dream to become a different human being, a specifically different person. If your actual dream in life is to become Brad Pitt, as in literally the guy, there's already something wrong. You should go talk to someone. But if you actually just want to become good looking, be in good shape, stay in good shape up until you're 60, 70, right? You want to be cool, you want to be likable, charismatic, kind of mysterious maybe. You can achieve all of those things within the context of who you are. You just got to work on them. But you can never be another person. And you really shouldn't want to be. You should want to be yourself. You should be proud of who you are. And you should work on improving who you are. Don't just be yourself in the sense of, I'm fine with who I am. You should be to an extent, but really you should be striving to be a better version of who you are right now. But you should not be striving to be someone else. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. This video is long enough. Decent length. I think still on the shorter side if we consider the kinds of talks I have uploaded in the past, but of a decent length. If you enjoyed yourself, if you liked this video, learned something, all of that good stuff, go ahead and leave a like. If you have any questions regarding anything I just talked about, you want my take on something, or you have a suggestion for a future video, there's a topic that you maybe are curious about, you want to learn about, you want me to talk about, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, if you want to support me and grow in my channel, if you are curious to see where this channel goes, go ahead and subscribe. Activate the notification bell if you feel like it, I suppose. And yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. My my voice is leaving me here. So yeah, work hard, work on your physique, work on your body, on your mind, on your general health. Get better at everything you can get better at. More importantly, though, get better at in everything and anything you want to get better at. Don't look at other people. Don't compare yourself to somewhere some other person is at. You don't know the life this person has had. And, sitting there and saying, I'm not going to compare myself because my genetics are worse is just as bad. Don't do that either, okay? You have no fucking clue what your genetics are like. You have no fucking clue what genetics this person has. You have no fucking clue what kind of life this person has lived, how long they've been working out for, what their workouts actually look like. You don't know. The only thing you should compare yourself to is you yesterday, you a week ago, you a month ago. That's the only comparison to be made. And if you actually got worse since last month, then, we need to talk. There's some work to be done. But probably not the case if you're putting in the work. See you around.